Hi everybody. Well, thanks to Dryle for inviting us to reminisce a bit about studying maths at Oxford. So my name's Alan E. Singer, and I was at Queen's 1972 to 1975, and then I went back a year later to do a postgraduate certificate of education. So start with the main memories. Well, actually, my main memory of this whole business was when the deputy headmaster at school was at my high school was asking couple of the guys, very clever guys, if they wanted to try the Oxford entrance exam, and I overheard that discussion, and I barged in and said, "Hey, I'd like to have a crack at that." And he said, "Yeah, okay." And guess what? I was the only one who actually scraped in by a fluke. So I do remember sitting that exam, and it was a good day. Then while I was at Queen's, because I was fortunate to have the famous tutor, or Professor Peter Neumann, and one particular memory is he said to me one day, he said, "Alan, you have a lot of good ideas. Some of them are a little wild." Right? So I never forgot that, and I think most of them are a little wild, to be honest. And then a not so happy memory is in that first year, I had the most terrible hay fever. You know, this sort of thing happens to all of us, right? And so I couldn't perform in the mods, and I only got a third, and everyone else got a second or a first in our group. So I was pretty fed up about that. But then in the third year, things were coming on well, and I do recall taking an interest in the most esoteric topics like analytic topology and that sort of thing. And I remember there was one lecturer who did a very advanced lecture and theorem, and then when I was revising it, trying to figure it out, there were a couple of steps I couldn't get, and so I actually took the step of phoning up that tutor or his college, and the person who answered the phone said, "I'm sorry, Dr. X is not here, he's overseas." And I thought, damn it. So I did my best, and guess what? That question came up in the finals, and I was only able to do about 3/4 of it, but that's the way it goes. Okay, so then the next thing is used maths. Have I used it in life, and has it influenced the way I see the world? No question about that. First of all, I had several short-term jobs, some of which I was fired from, in London, and also in Daventry one time, for a semester or two, teaching at schools. And then my big break was that I got a job teaching maths and stats in a business school, just the maths and stats part of it. And that allowed me to expand into all sorts of things and actually set the path for a very fortunate career in colleges as a lecturer and later on professor all over the place. Not teaching maths though, teaching a whole range of business related topics, and including some rather philosophical stuff. Anyway, so I wrote a couple of books. You can see them on the web. They were complete failures, but they didn't deserve to be, in my humble opinion. The most important way that you use maths, other than the obvious ways of, if you go into finance or engineering and so on, there's another way, and it's really not so much using maths as using what we might call meta-mathematics. That is to say, the psychological processes involved in learning mathematics. This is my main point that I wanted to share with you, that by studying maths from kindergarten through primary right through, you form a habit of paying attention to written or spoken statements. I mean, really paying attention to them until you can see for yourself whether that statement is true, valid, right, or not. You can see it for yourself, regardless of who said it. You can, by studying the statement, you can see for yourself. And not only see for yourself, once you have seen for yourself, you know 110% that anyone else who studies the same statement, the same theorem, the same proof, whatever, will eventually see it for themselves if they pay attention long enough. Now, there are big differences in capabilities. A lot of people might take years or a lifetime to see it, and some might take just 5 minutes. One of my favourite examples of that, by the way, is, I'll just show you. I always use this example. Really simple. Remember that? That's the geometric proof of Pythagoras' theorem. I'll let you look it up and figure it out. But what I wanted to say is, this is really important. Some people can look at that for a whole day and they still don't get it. They know this a squared plus b squared equals c squared. They were taught that, but they don't really know it. But when they see that geometric proof, some people instantly say, well, that's great, I get it. And others can look at it for 2 or 3 or 4 days, but eventually they get it. And they're really struck by that point that, yes, some things are undeniable truths, and anyone can see them if they pay attention for long enough. So that's my main message. You learn that as a habit, and that's very useful, okay? Especially when having meetings and arguing and so on. Okay, yeah, I talk about this at great length. It's relevant to politics, of course. And the other idea that really triggered something in my mind, I really like the basic idea of sets. Now, when I went to school, we didn't learn about sets. It was a university topic, but later on it became a school topic. But the idea is very interesting because set theory is actually rather abstract and hard to understand. But the idea of putting things into sets is something that really stayed with me all my life. In particular, putting arguments into sets. Like, you have any policy issue or any decision involving yourself or a group of people, you can list the arguments for and against doing things, right? And you can have that whole set of arguments, and you can partition the set. Here's the arguments for, here's the arguments against, and so on. You can have caveats, you can have correspondence and counterpoints, but that's a structure that I really learned from mathematics, or it occurred to me from mathematics, and it's always been very useful. So whenever you have policy arguments or discussions, it's not the people, it's the statements, and that's something you really learn from maths, you know. It doesn't matter that Pythagoras was a Greek man. You might not like Greeks, you might love Greeks, that's irrelevant, right? It's the statement. And that's a very important realization. Now, the other thing to realize is people differ greatly in their aptitude, not just for maths versus non-maths. So if you think you can't do it, you're misleading yourself, because there'll be some part of the mathematics syllabus that triggers your brain, that you do understand, that you can explore and you can develop. And while doing that, it doesn't matter that you say, what's the use of this? I'm never going to use it. You will use it, because the habit of studying it, right, will help you to pay attention to statements regardless who says them, and keep investigating them until you've seen for yourself whether they're true or not. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I was very lucky. It somehow inspired me to do all sorts of wrote all sorts of articles and had a successful academic career. But you know, these days that's probably not such a realistic thing. But that state of mind and the habit of inquiry is something that you can really learn from doing maths, and I would urge you to do it. And they asked about 14. Trial asked about 14-year-old girls or boys for that reason. Same thing. It doesn't matter how old you are. That's a good time to start developing that habit, and perhaps searching around till you find some area of mathematics that actually does appeal to you. You know, it's like music, right? You might like Bach, but you don't like Beethoven, or you might like a rap song, but you don't like a rock song. Same thing, there'll be something that gets you going on this, and it's a very worthwhile investment, just like going to the gym, but it's for your head. So I hope that encourages some of you. Oh, and by the way, don't worry about failure. Yeah, right. So, like I said, in the first 3 years after Oxford, I was sacked 3 times, and then in the next 35 years, I was nearly sacked 5 times, but I was lucky. I managed to get away with it. Okay, so bear that in mind, and good luck to all of you.